and welcome to Delightful Dissent. It's episode 28, and today I'm talking to Michelle Roberton, a sexual trauma and intimacy therapist and alchemist. Hi, Michelle. It's great to have you on the show. Welcome.
Hi, Matthew. Thank you.
Hi. We're going to be talking today about the idea that we should hide the messy stuff. And this is a really important one for me, I think, and I've spent a lot of energy hiding the messy stuff and making sure that it wasn't seen. And yeah, those bits that we don't feel are acceptable or are definitely not something that's comfortable to work with or comfortable to be with sometimes. And I think this is a really exciting one to explore on the kind of the deeper side of the work and how we work with stuff, and how it relates with our personal experience. So yeah, if you're new to the show, Delightful Dissent is really about those hidden barriers that we come up against, the hidden assumptions, the deep stuff that can trip us over, and they're all the more difficult because they are hidden. They're kind of implicit. They're just there underneath. It's to give you some ideas that you can work with on the specific topic that we're talking about, but it's really, perhaps more importantly, about showing, actually exploring what it is to challenge any of these assumptions, and hopefully giving you some ideas about assumptions you can go out there and challenge yourself as well. And it's called Delightful Dissent because, yeah, we are challenging something. We're saying, okay, we disagree in some way, but it's not about proving us right and someone else wrong. It's about really understanding things in a different way and playing with the possibilities rather than having to kind of close it all off and shut everything, any other possibility down. This show is genuinely live, so please do bear with us if there are any technical issues or anything comes up. And we are having a free conversation, so do be aware that there may be difficult topics coming up. There may be some things that are potentially triggering. We are talking about... we're going to be talking about some very personal things and potentially sex and sexuality today. So if that's potentially a difficult area for you, then please do be aware that that's a thing. We may also use strong language. So again, if that's a problem for you, then please do be aware that that's where we may go. There aren't any perfect answers here. This is about asking questions. We'll be asking questions and exploring. So do ask questions for yourself and do ask us questions as well. There'll be a chance to get in touch with either of us and details at the end of the show. But otherwise, yeah, you can, if you're watching live, you can ask questions in the chat, leave comments, and we'll be able to talk about them and share the conversation with you. So yeah, that's basically it for the intro. So I first met Michelle just a few weeks ago, actually. One of those really nice kind of online meetings. One of the nice effects of doing this show is actually getting to meet people who I wouldn't otherwise meet. And I was had a lovely first conversation and really struck by how she kind of created this joyful, quite warm space with quite a gentle strength. So it felt safe, but fun at the same time. And I really wanted to get some of that on the show. So yeah, could you, Michelle, talk a little bit about who you work with, the kind of and the work that you do?
Yeah, thank you, Matthew. I really appreciate your words there. So I share with people that have challenges or resistance to being within their own bodies, whether that's because of their relationship with their body. There's one of maybe self-sabotage or a dislike of one's body image or a lack of confidence, or that may be because of trauma, and so therefore they perceive their body as a painful place to be, to live. And my passion, my love, is supporting people to feel safe in their own skin and bones and their sexuality. So from that wonderful safe anchor, there's the energy and the desire to want to go out into the world and play and be curious. I really feel that we need those roots, kind of like children, where we then do know that we can go off and explore and be curious, and there is safety to that.
Thank you. It's wonderful. I think it's a really, really interesting thing for me, because I think if two people looked at our work from the outside, perhaps it looks quite different. But in our conversation, I was struck how similar we're doing. The work feels very similar across slightly different domains. But there is an intimacy to whatever it is that you do, and however you interact with anyone. Whether it's in the domain of interpersonal relationships and sexuality, or whether it's in the domain of work. And I think it's fascinating for me how similar actually I thought our approaches were. So it was really, really interesting. I'm really excited to explore this one a bit. So today we're talking about hide the messy stuff. And what was it about this idea, of hiding the messy stuff that you really wanted to get into and explore?
It's because of two things, really. Body image. We're very much taught there's this whole body perfect image, and that gets phased out and airbrushed and all those kind of things. So if we don't look that way, or we don't feel that way about our bodies, that can prevent us from being intimate with ourselves and others. And also sex is a big topic, that we seem to have a idea of how that looks and how that feels, and which doesn't invite us to show up emotionally messy, for example, or to show up and be okay with how our bodies looks if it's got scars, or is not a certain shape or certain color or gender. So we're constantly hiding either the way we look or the way we feel to meet others, and that gets in the way of intimacy. So that's why exploring this sounded quite delicious to me.
Indeed. I think that idea of, one of the words I often use is masking. The very often learned habit that it wasn't safe to be the full you at some point, and for many people it wasn't. This is the really difficult thing, I think, about this, is that either we thought it wasn't, maybe when we were children or when we were younger, or it genuinely wasn't. And there's not a lot. It almost doesn't matter in that. The question is it actually safe now? What is where can I move this to now? And that opening up process is hard. I think we underestimate how much is involved in that, and perhaps additionally, it's not something you can do with quite the same approach and intention. You can do it with intention, but you can't kind of direct it. You can't know exactly where it's going to go, and that's a really tricky thing for many people.
I think a lot of it is self-parenting, I suppose, like who made that wrong in the first place, and where did that idea of wrong or shameful, so we couldn't show up in our messy pieces, not right. There's this huge thing of wrong and right, acceptable and non-acceptable, lovable and not lovable, and who made these bullshit rules about what's lovable and what's not lovable, and what's right and what's wrong. If this is who we are, this is who we are.
I think that idea of lovability is a really big one, and it's interesting. I was actually watching a play about neurodiversity at the weekend, where that was a really big theme. And what do I need to do? What do I need to fix? What do I need to tidy in order to be lovable?
Exactly, and I think that's an undercurrent message all the time. That am I lovable? And if not, then what can I fix to make myself lovable? And even in the way I show people, it's like, am I touchable? Can I be touched? So it's a whole fear of being touched, because they may be repulsive. Their bodies may be repulsive.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's with the people I work with, it's often it's the valuing, the valuableness is what is me as my. And there's an interesting thing, Arantera, I'd like to get into actually around this kind of sense of intrinsicness and authenticity, and because it's a difficult word as well. So, but is me kind of unguarded, without the masking, valuable? can I be, you know, will I get my material needs met if I'm just me? Or will people reject what I offer? And I think that it feels kind of related in some way. An interesting thing, you know, that experience of being concerned about rejection, protecting oneself from rejection, because there are bits that you don't approve. You're kind of rejecting bits of yourself somehow.
Yeah, I think it's the idea of how we believe on past experiences or past beliefs of how someone may respond to that what we perceive as unlovable. And someone else may not even consider that part of us to be unlovable. It's our inner communication, isn't it? That,
and I think
things that get in the way of intimacy. And yeah, authentic is a word, but you know, that is thrown around a lot at the moment. What does authentic mean? It doesn't, even authentic doesn't mean to be perfect. Authentic means to be authentically messy as well.
And for me, it's so much of a dynamic thing. It's like there's a lot of stuff that it feels like, okay, I'll discover my authentic self, and then I'll be done. It'll all become easy. I'll be finished. I'll be awakened and enlightened, and it feels all related somehow, you know. And I'll be able to and then it'll all sort itself out. And I think, relatedly, there are quite a few people who are selling that message.
That's very guru.
Well. Yeah, and that message that someone can guide you, you know, like take you to your authentic self. And for me, it isn't a finished thing. It can't be a finished thing. And actually, when we're working with someone around this, we're really helping someone to develop this themselves, so they can continue to explore when they're not working with us anymore, rather than us like showing someone where it is and going, look, there it is, you're done, fixed.
No, it's not something that happens within a retreat or a course. I feel the greatest teachers are the ones who they then become our last teachers, and I certainly aspire to that. Is that, as you said, you give that person, you offer that person a set of tools for them to go off on their own self-exploration, and make them simple and attainable, so that they have the learning tools to learn of themselves. I don't believe it's something that we do to people.
No.
I don't like the whole idea of something being done to me or happening to me. It's about collaboration of being the happening together, and then supporting that person to fly the nest and know they continue to be the happening. That's life. Life is constantly alive. Life doesn't hit a point. Nature doesn't hit a point. Say, oh, okay, I'm an oak tree now, I'll stop. It keeps growing.
And I think it's interesting to kind of think about, you know, when we say messy, you know, one of the big things I like to explore on this show is really what's underlying the words, because there are a lot of words that get thrown around, and a lot of words, particularly in the personal development space. And sometimes they're used they're used like everyone knows what they mean, and like we mean the same as someone else means when they say them, and that's very often not true. So I think there's something really interesting for me in the messiness around the stuff that doesn't fit the story. You know, it's the stuff that isn't the straightforward, simple explanation. It's the stuff that goes off at a bit of an angle, that doesn't, you know, that sits outside of the boundaries of the box. When we say messy stuff, what does that mean to you?
I suppose to me, kind of maybe what we see as the shadow side of ourselves, like we've said, the unlovable parts, the parts that may be grieving, the parts that may be tearful, the parts that may be angry. And it's more like we can have messy emotions and we decide that they're wrong and that we can't express them, so we suppress them. And just messy is just everything. I think everything's messy. Enlightenment, that's messy. Enlightenment is messy, and it's not an end, like you said. Yeah, life is messy, actually. We can't have this whole life of sunshine and rainbows. There has to be the shit, completely. And we need that to grow into our next phase. There's always that messy bit, and then the growing out of the messy bit. That's human. So you asked me what is messy. Being human is messy. full stop. But we try to disown that. I think that's the messiest bit about being messy, is that we disown all the messy, because it's not sellable, is it? You can't really market messy, and it's not attractive, it's not shiny, it's not polished, it's not guru, it's not all those things. It may even spiritual. This whole, we spoke before about spirituality. If spirituality is messy because it's part of who we are. Yes, I think life is messy, and the more we accept that and celebrate that, then the easier it becomes, and the more playful messy can be, rather than serious and drama and chaos.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, isn't it? The idea that messy is a problem.
Yes, so we shove it away.
It's that it needs to be solved, and urgently. I think as well. That's the other thing. My own experience. I feel an awful lot of urgency, or certainly have done for quite for a lot of my life. Felt that there was always something else I should be. Whenever I'd be doing anything, I should always be doing something else. Kind of pulling me out of presence into the future, an imagined future. And I think that that relates to this. Like, well, I need to solve this, I need to understand this, I need to square this away. Needs to be explained, needs to be understood.
It's that fixing thing, isn't it? We need to fix.
Instead of allowing, and giving the space. And I think there is a lot of pressure. We're brought up. We assume in the in a lot of how things are explained to us. How we think about things. It feels as a society. Any of this, anything where there's a relationship between two people in some way, is that the messy stuff is seen as a barrier. To that, and if it's all explainable, all explicable, and we know ahead of time, and we can that's the only way we're going to feel safe, and that's the only way we're going to be able to work that way. We're going to be able to relate to people, and the messy stuff is unsafety.
It's not the messy stuff that's a problem, as far as I can see. It's our approach to it and our attitude to it, where, as I said, out of messy something beautiful can grow. One of my favorite sayings I always say is, out of shit grows beautiful roses. And it's true. But because our approach, we either dramatize it and we make it more chaotic, or, like you say, we hurry up and fix it without listening. What about the silence and the just listening to the message of the messy? What's if we approached it curiously, like we're in a science lab and we're playing with this messy, and it's a friend that's maybe has got a couple of warts and things, and actually loved the messy, then something beautiful could come out of that. But we don't. We shove away, or we make it a huge drama, or like we fix so we can hurry up and get past that and on to the next bit. And then we often end up that we've fallen back into messy again because we're in such a hurry to leave it in the first place. So that's repetitive messy.
I think that's it. That's one of the really big things, and it's that repeated nature of the issue. If we can experience it and work through it, it kind of changes things. We can there's a level of trust in our emotions, in our feelings, allowing them to do their thing without consciously mediating them first, that if we can't do that, they never get the opportunity to do their thing. And so we will repeat and repeat and repeat. And I think relatedly, you know, one of to the kind of security thing, it's a strange thing, you know, we assume that sensing the thing is the problem. Sensing that there's some tension or some incongruence is the problem. Whereas really, it's the underlying thing that we want to change. That's actually what we want to work with. But we can focus instead on the sensation of the thing rather than the thing. You know, on the whatever the sensation is, and I say that in the kind of broadest sense, the idea of the thing maybe. It's a really strange thing, and it's very easy to get drawn into. For me, I certainly still sometimes get, you know, it's like I must do it this way. You know, the only way to experience this is this way. That feels like a real interesting kind of tricky thing to get out of sometimes.
I think maybe it's the possibility that we believe we are the messi rather than it's something that's passing through. So we very much make our identity out of things. So if messy is anger that day, for example, then I am angry, or I am anger. It must be the person I am. But it isn't. It's, you know, there's that wonderful poem about all our emotions being guests and to invite them all in. And they pass. We're never that thing forever. But either because we form an identity out of it or we push it away, it is repetitive. It becomes something constantly present in our life. As you said, because there's no allowing, there's a fixing, or I have become this. I think it's also the way people meet us. Oh, you're such an angry person, or you're such a blah blah person. So they've created an identity for us as well.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. And taking on the identity that other people kind of give us, when that identity is really in relation to them.
Yes. Yeah.
Without taking into account the fact that it's in relation to them.
Exactly. Wonderful tool of projection.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It makes me think of this idea of, you know, when something's completely unsafe and it mustn't be, or it must be, and they often go together. There's a mustn't be and a must be kind of together. We kind of end up living our whole life dictated by the thing that we're avoiding. It's famously, you know, I think it's I think Albert Camus talks about the priest who renounces sex and then his entire life is about sex. Because he can't, you know, because it's like everywhere, because everything is connected and everything is you know, that the connections are unclear and perhaps messy, intertwined. We kind of suddenly can't separate anything out anymore, and then we lose, we kind of contract instead of, you know, we were talking about awareness and growing outwards, but then we kind of contract inwards instead, hold off. And physically, I think, you know, it's a really difficult, you know, it's a tricky space, and I think there is a degree of risk, you know, there's an uncertainty involved in this. I think this is one of the things that has to be acknowledged. It's not something you can just do. A lot of people in this space, it's like, well, okay, I want to, there is this other way of being that is potentially available to me, but I can't get there. I can't know what that is, and I can't be comfortable in that space without trying it out, you know, without actually trying it out. And I think that role of play and playfulness is so important in getting us to, you know, towards that, moving in that direction, the stuff that just wasn't in our previous experience, but that we would perhaps like to experience.
Yeah, and just you saying there as well, like that's where we are and that's where we want to get to. I think that makes it challenging for us as well. So that's still making wrong and right, bad and good. That where I am right now and where I want to be, can make a gap. And that happens as well with teachers and therapists. We can see a gap between where we are and how we're feeling and the person in front of us that is this evolved person. And I think that can make a gap as well that supports the messy, is what I'm trying to say in a very roundabout way. But are messy, and it's also, okay, so these are the messy parts of me, so I want to hurry up and work through them. That's not how it works either. It's not we hurry up and get rid of those bits or make those bits better or fix those bits and then ta-da, I'm here. It's a continual journey because something else, we're always transitioning in life.
No, you're right. I know it's something. It's interesting. Yeah, I one of the things I've spoken about on the show before is that I'm not. It's interesting. I should use it because this is the difficulty. The metaphors are so deeply in us, and these ideas are so deeply in us. It's actually quite hard to step away from them fully and work, even if you believe something different. And the journey metaphor, you're right, I struggle with because it suggests that you've got a place where you are and a place where you want to go. And instead I think of it as a piece of music, a dance. It's not that the purpose is not to get to the end of the song. The purpose of a song is not to finish the song. It's something different. And that approach it feels more like the space that we're really talking about, maybe.
Yeah, well, if we think about the universe, it's always, there's an expansion, but there's always a contraction before it expands again, and then it's like a pulsation. And I believe that's very much how life is. There's always there's a pulsation. We grow a little bit, and then we may come back a little bit, and then we grow. That's definitely how it feels for me. I just felt when we were talking about a sharing of something I myself played with the past year. I was going through a grief, but not in a way that maybe we would label that grief. So I'd come to a part of my motherhood that had finished, as in the transition, or my children had left home. But because everyone had said, this is the best time of your life, your children have left home, and I wasn't feeling that. I was feeling a lot of sadness and loss. It was a real challenge for me because no, that's how it's meant to be. And I'm feeling this way. So that was a real time of denying the messy. I wasn't suppressing it. I was in absolute denial of it. And it just got stronger and stronger and stronger and more overwhelming till I had to take complete time out of work, sharing sessions and things like that, and immerse into grief. And from that deep diving into it, I felt an opening. This is what I mean about the expansion, contraction. From truly getting into the messiness of grief, I felt a real, and grief is a key one. It's particularly the past year, we've all felt grief on some level, the way COVID has changed our lives. But again, it's something we are quite prim and proper and British about, and it's a bad thing, grieving. It's something we don't talk about, like sex. So all these messy things are also very beautiful experiences as well. They're not bad. There's two sides to everything.
And I think relatedly, there's something around our capacity for pleasure and our capacity for loss, because we can kind of protect ourselves from loss by never really enjoying anything.
Yes.
If you see what I mean.
But they're intermingled. The more we have loss, the more we expand into pleasure.
Exactly.
We have to know the depth of both. That's the dance.
And that they are almost, they are not separable
No.
really, on quite the level that we think we can't have, you know, and that they're, and that somehow, you know, I think this idea that, you know, is related to you know, feeling bad. It's like, well, no, it's feeling, and it might be a feeling that you know, that's telling you something is you would like to change, or is you know, that there's something to be changed, you know, that there might be something to be altered, you know, a different path to take, which I think is very related to grief, actually. You know, that idea that we naturally construct a kind of story about where we are and where we're going, and that's an important thing. You know, we use that to anchor in all sorts of things. We use that a lot. But if it's too scary to reassess and to fix, you know, there's a loss of an imagined future when we have grief. It's like, I thought I was going to be enjoying this. I thought this was going to be continuing. I thought this person was going to be present, or this thing was going to be present. It no longer is. And that the grief actually allows us to then come up with another alternative, you know, a different way that doesn't involve that. But that can be I think there's something around that's difficult, and it's interesting. It's related to the kind of, and then again, another one of those things, that the separation is just to be ready to separate from something, you know, be okay separating from something, not be attached to something, is actually the extent to which you can fully engage with it and enjoy it.
Yes, it's yeah, I agree. I also feel it's our perception. When we perceive that is how something should look and feel like and be like, and then it doesn't come up to our ideal, and then we deny it as well, or we don't want to interact with it. It's, you know, for example, my perception of grief last year, it couldn't possibly be grief because there wasn't a death, it was a loss. And I says it's whole, but this isn't how it's meant to look like. This is not how it's meant to be. So we do that with all our feelings. If they're not, our perception denies us the actual experience of what is happening for us.
I'm interested, I think, in this is one of the challenges I have in this space is that it can be very, it's very experiential. And when we work with someone in that space, that sense is, you know, you kind of get a sense of it, but it actually, first of all, it's a very difficult thing for people to step into a space where they don't have any sense of it. I make almost all my decisions mostly like intuitively first. I suspect more people do than are aware they do, but I definitely do. I know I do. And so if I don't have an intuitive sense of something before I step into it, just a feel for it, I'm very, very wary of whether I'll do that, even if it appears practically helpful. But I think there's a challenge there about how we do get an intuitive sense of that, an intuitive sense of what's helpful. So I think it would be interesting to perhaps explore how people in their own lives might play with this for themselves in a small way, you know, in a safe way. So if someone does want to kind of engage with this, share some of the messy stuff instead of hiding it all, what might they be able to do? How might they be able to start exploring this?
I think it's befriending the feeling, and to, like you said, intuitively know whether something is right or wrong for you. That's a sense feeling, so you feel into whether that is right or wrong for you. So that's the intuitive side. Intuitive isn't so much a thought, it's a feeling. So if, for example, someone is having an emotion that they are finding that they are calling messy, but it's also denying them fully experiencing life somehow, it's restricting them and keeping them small, then I personally would spend time getting to know that feeling. So it may be, it may have a memory attached to it. It may be that the first time we felt that feeling, we were a child and fell over and hurt our knee, and no one else was around to support us or soothe us. These emotions often have stories to tell. If you unravel them, they have a beginning. And I think that comes from attending to it from an adult place. You know, who I am today is this age, I'm safe, I'm here in this building, and I can start playfully attending to this feeling. But if we get immersed into and drowning in the feeling, we do drown in the feeling, and we do become that feeling. It becomes all-consuming. But if we can, like, parent it instead, I think that's another way. Certainly for myself in the past, I'd use. I would look at how I attended to my children's messy, my children's emotions, and then reflect and attend to myself in that way. So there was a self-parenting happening there that started to make all these messy parts okay. And they were lovable, because if I could love that in my daughter or my son, then I could love that in me too. So the unconditional love was, I was turning it around and to be able to support myself. Because the way we talk to ourselves, we wouldn't dream of talking to the people we love in that way. So it's really is in watching our internal language. Even journaling is a great way of exploring an emotion and not stopping while you write and just letting it unravel. And I'm sorry, I used to do paint with my hands, messy paint. If I couldn't put the feelings into words, but I knew I wanted to express it. So I would just, like, hand painting as a child, it'd be an awful mess. But from that, I'd go like, wow, that actually is beautiful. And it would say a lot to me, but I'd also got it out and had compassion. I think that's the other beautiful thing, that we can start to have compassion for these parts of ourselves, which is such an enriching life experience, to start to have compassion. It's just going off a little on the way. Before this meeting, I was walking with a friend and my puppy, and he asked me about my body and my scars, and, you know, was I embarrassed about them? And no. And that's just change of perception and how we attend to things. I am grateful for them because I'm alive. And that's what I mean. So I could go down that route of what everyone else would assume, that my scars, I must be embarrassed. They're awful. You know, they're red, they're this, they're that. But I haven't. There was a time when I was, but I've changed my approach. So actually, I'm really grateful for these, because if they weren't there, I wouldn't be here. So this is what I mean by playing. You know, what else is available around this to me? That's the doom, the gloom, the pain, the trauma, but there is something beautiful available to me here, and maybe tiptoeing and exploring into that pool.
Absolutely. I think it's really interesting. And, you know, scars, whether they're physical scars or emotional scars, are the sign that things were not perfect.
Yes.
And I think if we're trying to kind of create that perfect present, they kind of intrude.
Yes.
It's like it's a reminder that things never were perfect, ideal.
That was his other comment. He said, but aren't they a reminder? No. No. But our scars, you're right, emotionally and mentally, they can be a reminder of our past hurts, our past pains. Yeah. And
it's interesting, I feel, you know, if we if we do take the time and the energy, and accepting that having the time and the privilege to do this is privilege, to give ourselves the space to do this is not something everyone has the opportunity to do. Because I think that's another thing that I really dislike about the guru message, is that you should do this. You should make the money, you should have the money and spend the money and spend the time. And if you don't, it's kind of a moral failure. Or that you experienced it in the first place is a moral failure, relatedly. And that I think is a huge thing, actually, as a result of this, that you shouldn't have had this traumatic experience, or you shouldn't have experienced this as traumatic. And that there's somehow a moral element to that working out, stepping outside of that and allowing ourselves to be with no kind of, it happened outside of that space. And yes, there are things that are, that certainly in terms of the inner experience, it's not right and wrong how you feel. No. Relatedly, what you want isn't right or wrong either, and that there's that I think for me personally, the allowing of what I actually want, needs, okay, that wasn't ever a huge issue, like fundamental practical needs. It's okay. Wants, desires, definitely a trickier area. And I think that is that feels related. How can we sit with what we actually desire? What do we really want? And that feels like a difficult thing, and quite related to shame, actually, and the keeping a lid on that.
I think it's because desire is part of our erotic nature, and our erotic nature has been shamed. So therefore, desire will feel shameful if our erotic nature feels shameful. But you use should there a lot.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Someone said should to me, even if it was a guru, I would be legging it in the other direction. Should is so forceful and intrusive, and
it feels like a violent word.
Yes, it feels violent. It feels aggressive. It's not my favorite word at all.
No.
So any guru that was saying should, and also an authentic guru would reveal their messy parts. If they're having a bad day, it's not all love and light. So to be selling that is really wrong. I think that's abusive to people to be selling something as in all love and light. And we can't take time out. It's a modern world. It's about we have to be in it. Can't go and sit on mountain sides.
Well, if we can, that's nice. But
yes, but we've still got to go back to life,
and we still have to go back to I think that's the it is the urge to retreat permanently. I don't have a problem with making space, taking the space that you need to get some perspective. I think it's when that can become almost its own compulsion. It can replace the other compulsions instead. It's like, well, I'm compulsively not of this world, not of my body, not in the messiness, in the reality, in the and it's this interesting thing, and particularly in spirituality and kind of purpose-led work, and the space that I work in as well, and the kind of, some people call it spiritually led work. It's like, well, it's this separation, it's the separation of the spirit from the body. It's like they're two separate things. Like this desire to perfect, to separate from the messy embodied stuff.
I think it's about supporting us to create tools that we can use in our daily life, so that it's not separate from. It can't be separate from. And that's not grounding either. When we go on these silent retreats or these retreats and we learn things, we then, it's about grounding them into our reality and allowing them to take on their own life force within our reality. Because we do have a modern, busy, over-stimulated world. And it's just adapting what we have learned or what we've learned about ourselves with that. So there's more of a meeting and of body, mind and spirit, not a separation. I feel we're all three things, and all three things need to be in balance. Certainly not in denial of any three of those things, otherwise we'll never have a sense of wholeness or fulfillment, for that matter, because part of us will be missing. Part of us would have been shamed and separated off somewhere.
Yeah, and that separate, neglected part is always going to be, have a pull, have a
exactly.
Yeah.
Our mind is always going to be there. Our body is always here. The spirit side of us is always there. And they can work beautifully together.
I think that idea of, playing with how those things can overlap joyfully, where they intersect joyfully, I think is a really interesting approach, rather than saying, I fix this area and then that area. It's like, I do this, then I do that. I get, I get the job, then I'm happy, or I get the, or I have the relationship and then I'm happy, or I have the job and then I have the relationship and then I'm happy. Or,
I'm happy when.
I'm happy when, exactly. And that idea that we can, I think it's a really interesting one, because this is something I play with and I'm exploring myself, is this idea that I can be comfortable with the now and enjoy the now, and still yet imagine and spend energy to move towards a future that is different, and I can enjoy perhaps more. And I think it's a really interesting one. There feels like there's kind of something slightly contradictory there, and I'm not sure there really is, but yeah, it's an interesting one for me to play within this space. When we do spend, we are on some level working to change things as people. Both of our work is on some level about changing things.
I say, and there's you're saying that it's because we are creative beings, so we can be content and fulfilled in the now. This is how my feeling, but because we are creative, and because we are universal, the universe will say, oh, I've created that and I'm content, but I'm going to stop expanding. There's always creation and creation and creation. So it is like, I'm present, I'm content, I'm fulfilled now, but I love creating and creating. And that is imagination and play and future.
And I think interestingly,
we can do that without making today wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a great way of putting it. That just because you would like things to be different doesn't mean that you would like tomorrow to be different. Today isn't wrong. I love that. It relates to me to what you're saying about that creative energy, to kind of Jung's idea of the libido and the creative, the life force, and that it doesn't. We kind of, it's almost like when we're trying to seek these perfect solutions and not have to think about it anymore, not have to sense it anymore. It's almost like it's an ending. It's not experiencing that energy anymore. And actually, as certainly my journey, as I've come to explore this and come to play with this, is it's the energy that I'm enjoying. If I let go, if I don't have that that creative tension, I suppose, on some level, then there's actually life isn't much fun.
No, I agree with you. I feel it's our vibrancy and our color and our aliveness, and it's so related to our sexuality. It is our sexuality. I'm not talking about the act of sex. It is our sexuality and sensuality. So if we deny ourselves of that, then we will feel our energy diminish, and we will feel grey and dull, and life will feel like there's something missing. But we can be in a state of constant creation without making today wrong, or even it's like, it's not even like wanting something to be different. It's that desire for more, which again is a human thing. There is a moreness that we're always looking for. And I feel as soon as we step into that moreness is our sexuality and creativity, and we can embody that, the moreness doesn't become so much of a hunger, a hunger for moreness. It becomes more of an adventure. And more of a, oh, well, there's strawberry ice cream, and now I can have banana, and now I can have chocolate. You know, I want all the ice creams without it being wrong.
It feels like it's
or greedy. That's the other thing that gets, oh, that's so self-centered, and that's so greedy, and that's selfish. Well, no, because I think a lot of this is we become more ourselves, and then so we're more ourselves with others. I don't think it's selfish.
It's a strange idea, isn't it? I think, but it's a very strong idea out there that it's selfish to meet one's own needs. You know, to take agency, take agency, and say, okay, I'm going to take responsibility for my needs and my desires, and I'm going to meet them in a way that doesn't hurt anyone else, but I'm going to meet them on my own terms. And it feels like that interestingly related to the kind of guru-ness is like, well, it's that idea that someone else it's either me responsible for meeting my own needs, or it's someone else. So which is the healthier relationship, which is healthier, which is more helpful, you know, and am I handing over that responsibility for what I'm enjoying, for what I want to experience, you know, for my desire to someone else? Or am I taking that responsibility and saying, yeah, it's great if we engage in this, but equally I can do this in any other way as well. You know, it doesn't need one specific person, one specific method, and one specific approach necessarily, whilst you may want to, you know, there may, and that feels like actually quite key to that is what other ways could I meet this desire?
I feel it's how we share. If you feel fulfilled and happy and you've met your own desire, and it's no longer a need, because needy energy can be unattractive to other people.
It's unsafe. I think it's good.
It's unsafe coming from need. But if you feel full, then everything you do becomes more of a sharing with other people, rather than a give and a take and a grab and a it becomes, you know, I have this, I own this feeling, and now I can share this. So it's a sense of a more fullness. Like children look full. They look full in their bodies. They look so alive and radiant, and and so it's a pleasure to be with them. But they're not giving us anything. They're just sharing who they are. And I like that that they are fulfilling their own need in some way, their own internal need. They're not seeking for a guru, for example. I mean, a lot of this stuff children are doing naturally, and as adults we make such a big deal about it. Whereas children, and we were children once, so we can relate to it.
It's often the thing, you know, one of the things I play with a lot in my work is the learning and the unlearning, you know, and we do, you know, the learning is helpful to a point. But it's a bit like what you were saying about the taking it away and making it your own. The difficulty we have is we're very often that second bit, the integration bit, is not something that most existing approaches really give space for, not something that they can't take into account. So it's more push more in from outside until it. No wonder we feel overwhelmed. No wonder we feel like there isn't any space for anything else. We haven't had the chance to integrate and bring all of those experiences in and make sense of them. And I think on our own terms.
Sorry, another tactic is that is used is to keep digging deeper, dig deeper, dig deeper, dig deeper. And it's just, haven't had any time to release that and then settle into what that feels like now without that that trauma, or without that diminishing belief, and then go a little bit deeper and get used to that. We're not given the time with a lot of these things, like he was saying.
And for me, it's finding the joy in it. There's a joy in a kind of mastery of a given level of depth. That we forget that we take joy in that, and that is the shared thing. It's that I enjoy doing this and I take joy in your joy, and it becomes this positive feedback loop instead of this transactional negative kind of I take from you and then you take from it. So it becomes kind of almost the opposite direction. But that is founded in that time to find the joy that's there in the thing. And it might be a very small part of it. I think that's the difficult thing. It can be a very small voice. But it is present.
Because, a lot of this is taken so seriously. And there's a difference in quality in the word, I feel, between serious and sincere. So we can attend to these things with a sense of sincerity. But as soon as it becomes serious, that playfulness that makes space has been crushed. Our self-reflection, our self-improvement, or I can bear that word, self-exploration, it's playful. And as soon as it becomes serious, the energy that supports us to move has been squashed, has been dulled in some way.
I really like sincerity as a challenge to authenticity as well.
Absolutely.
I think that's a really lovely point to kind of wrap up, really, and the sincerity in the messy stuff. That part of sincerity is that it can't be anything else. It has to have a bit of otherwise it's a different thing. It lacks life. It lacks the energy. I think that's a really interesting and actually quite challenging, fundamentally challenging angle. And I think for me, certainly if you're watching, I think it's a really interesting thing to play with itself, hold it lightly as well. I think that's the other thing about this stuff is it's like, we're not saying, when I do this work and talk to people about it, it's like, well, no, I'm not saying that you need to do what I'm talking about perfectly either. You play with the playing.
They're possibilities. They're invitations of possibilities of other ways other people attend to things. And so like, I like that there, and so I'll play with that. And no, that's not for me, so I'll leave that there. There's not one right way and one right pathway. It's experimental, and none of it is ever wrong or ever right. It's totally about what feels good and nourishing for self, and loving and compassionate.
No, that's great. I think that the idea of inviting oneself to play is a lovely pace to kind of bring the conversation to a bit of a close. So thank you very much for that. Really fascinating. If people have watched this and they want to find out a bit more about you or want to reach out, what's the best way for them to do that? We do have, I think we've got a link to your website in the show notes. So
that is the best way. On my website, there's a contact form, and
great.
People just drop me a line, and I always invite a casual conversation, just a chat, because I think it's really important that people feel at ease with who they're going to see and have an adventure with. I think that's really important. So I'm always open to conversations.
Brilliant. And have you got anything specific coming up, or anything that you're planning to do that people might like to know about? Doesn't have to. Maybe.
Lingering in the background, I'm creating a free community for conversations around body and sex and the unsafety and the safety in that. that it's not quite ready yet. I'm still creating.
Cool. That's interesting. Community is a really important part of this, and it's something I'm exploring as well. So we'll have a bit more of a chat about that. But yeah, no, that's brilliant. Yes. Thank you. Okay, so do get in touch with Michelle if you found this resonant. I thought that was a really interesting exploration, and I really enjoyed that. So yeah, if you're out there watching, also do share this with anyone you think might find it helpful. But particularly share your feelings about it and your reflections about it with other people, perhaps more than actually sharing the thing. It's a conversation, and get in touch with us as well. And the messy stuff doesn't have to be a perfect, great, complete summary of how you felt or whatever. A bit of the mess is absolutely fine in the conversation as well. The recordings of other shows are on YouTube as well, so if you want to catch any episodes, you can have a look at the YouTube channel, and there is a podcast available too. So search for Delightful Dissent on wherever you get your podcasts from. I hope the show got you thinking, do reach out and ask us if you want to know any more or want to carry on the conversation. Next episode, we're taking a bit of a divergence. There's a bit of messy stuff here, because I try and do these every week, but that doesn't always work out. So we haven't got one scheduled for next week, but I'm not actually taking a break. I'm going to use next week to try some new stuff out. So if you're around and looking for Delightful Dissent in its normal slot, then keep an eye out for whatever it is and whatever format I try something new in. So there'll be something new coming out soon. In the meantime, thank you all very much for watching. Thank you, Michelle, for joining us. And do go out there and make some delightful dissent of your own. Goodbye.